You're watching the Battered Fans Network.
The Herons are champs. Yeah. Roll south to Freedom Park, rocking pink and black. Official tissue in the 305, bounty full of greats. The Battered Fan with Chris and Dan dropping hot takes. Messi and the Herons start the season with a star on the crest. So 29 fan bases can cry, cause we the best. Sign homegrowns like Noah, Frey and Ruiz, replacing goats with greats. Yeah, Miles got the cheese and he called it. Freedom to dream was the backbone. From Lockhart to Miami, it feels good to be at home. Multiple times a week on YouTube and audio. Take the time to subscribe, like and share the show. So check and chat, grab your MLS cup and coming. No question about it, I'm ready to get a star again.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
Scotty, Darren's back. Welcome everybody to episode number 530 of the Battered Herons podcast. I am your host, Daniel Ganana, and alongside me, special guest Mr. Scotty Grays from the DRV Pink Dialogue. How are you doing, sir?
Doing good, man. I think we would all be doing a little bit better if this weekend hadn't gone the way it had, but I think maybe that's what we should talk about because it was so good until it went so bad, and it almost demands more attention with everything that's been going on this last month since Mascherano left. It's been a very interesting time for Inter Miami.
35 minutes of great football. And even then, I thought that they didn't play great because I felt like the defensive had some lapses. There were some moments in there where Martino Ojeda was on top of the box. Nobody was closing in. He had time to take a shot from outside the box. So the first half, although it ended up well, I thought defensively we didn't look necessarily great. But Orlando had a hard time getting out of their own third because we were pressing. They couldn't get out of their own third. The second half, we didn't press as much, if at all. Now, I attribute some of that to maybe Luis Suarez's not being fit to go 90 minutes yet in the season. And then just being lackadaisical, I think, because when you watch that game back, because I know you watched it after the fact because you were at a wedding. When you watch the game after the fact and you know the result, you start looking to see what happened. In the second half, when I watched it, because I watched it a second time, there was no urgency in the press. Orlando was beating that press with one or two touches. And I felt like that was one of the main reasons why Orlando looked so much better in the second half. And the second reason I thought they looked so much better in the second half was because they surrendered the midfield. They pressed with 2 or 3 up top, and they defended with 7 or 8 in the back. And they said, go ahead, run through the midfield, but good luck breaking us down. Whereas I felt like in the first half, they were a little more structured in the middle.
I agree with both those points. I think we would be remiss to not mention.
Oh, my bad. Hold on. We shout out to Kevin. Good evening. What's going on, Kev?
Yeah, good evening, man. By the way, I just want to say I always enjoy your chat whenever I come on. I think we would also be remiss if there wasn't a little mention of complacency in the second half. Like the first half felt so good, and I think for the players, they would have felt that way. That I think they probably thought they were going to cruise into a comfortable victory, and that obviously didn't happen. But even as you're watching into the early parts of the second half, they are creating opportunities that mostly get missed by Berterame. But it was still like a fourth goal could be there at any moment, and let's just keep doing what we're doing. It'll come, and then they weren't able to sort of handle the onslaught when it came. But I think you identified it pretty well why Orlando City was able to turn the tides, and Inter Miami wasn't really able to respond.
Yeah, and I felt like Orlando was baiting Inter Miami into those counters because I felt like I heard the announcer say it's 2-on-2. How many times did he say that? It felt like every minute or two. It was it's 2-on-2. We just kept getting caught on the counter, and it was Mikael and Falcon, our last line of defense, and they have this issue where I don't know if it's a lack of communication or what, but they tend to mark the same spaces. They either both run into the left channel or the right channel, and they forget like, hey, there might be somebody else running in behind. And I feel like although St. Clair has not played great, he hasn't. He's been put in such bad situations consistently because of the defense. So although I don't think St. Clair has been great, I also think that he hasn't had the best alignment in front of him to, in some ways, protect him.
Well, you know, one of the things that's, I think, becoming pretty clear is Inter Miami's switched up how they want to run this team since they've added Guillermo Hoyos to the interim coaching role. They want to be more aggressive. They want to press a lot. They want to be on the front foot. They want to play the game in the opposition's half. And if you are not good enough as the opposition to play through that and make them pay that way, then you do it by going long and staying deep in a low block and then having 2 or 3 guys get forward and try and make 1 or 2 plays happen. Inter Miami's defense has not adjusted their play style in order to counter this. One of the things that I've seen a lot of the last couple of days is people saying you can't play a high line with these guys. They're just not athletic enough. And I watched the play and I think to myself, Maxi Falcone is playing as if he's going to have coverage all around him, but the rest of the team is playing as if they're trying to, be in the opposition's half. He is actually on an island back there trying to play center field. Rather, he's supposed to be trying to play center field, trying to be a free safety, keep everything in front of him. And if there is a 2-on-2 opportunity, slow them down, push them wide, make it easier for your goalkeeper, make it a worse angle for the shot. Like, there's all these different ways you play as a center back if you are playing in a high line, and you are going to have to do a lot of one-on-one defending. And I don't think our center backs, specifically Maxi Falcone, has gotten that message across to him yet, because he's still playing hyper-aggressive, trying to chase guys into the midfield, trying to win balls high up the field, and he's leaving a ton of space in behind. He's still trying to be a playmaker, where I think he needs to be a free safety that just keeps everything in front of him. And I think both of our center backs need to do that, but I think Maxi Falcone's been particularly bad about that in the last couple games.
Shout out to Genrimo. It's his birthday. Actually, it's Star Wars Day. I'm sorry. Everybody wish Chris a happy Star Wars Day because he loves that. So happy Star Wars Day to Chris. And he's not here because he's celebrating Star Wars Day, probably playing with some lightsabers or something. So I have a question for you. You and I were going back and forth about Hoyos earlier on Twitter. If Mascherano is running the team and they have that 3-2 lead, do they win that game?
Yes.
Because if Suarez comes off, he doesn't come off for Allende, he comes off for Lujan.
Yes. And also our whole play style goes back to let's preserve this.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Now, because I can't remember if you were on the Tatao train. I wasn't. But everybody that was on the Tatao train they hated the way Tata kind of set his team up, which is kind of like what you're saying Hoyos is doing, right? Be very aggressive on the front foot, but you're trying to outscore the other team. And that's what everybody hated about Tata. That's what everybody thought, you can't win this way. Everybody came, Mascherano played not that far off either because he's playing a high line also, not as aggressive, but still with the high line. First of all, were you Tata out? Like, did you think Tata had done enough to keep his job? And two, if you were for Tata, you're okay with this style of play?
I was surprised that they moved on from Tata Martino, but I kind of respected it because it felt like we weren't accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish with Tata Martino. But I liked the play style, and throughout the entire Javier Mascherano era, I thought they needed to play more like Tata Martino wanted this team to play, and I've been a big fan of how they've played over the last couple games. Obviously, the storyline coming out of Orlando City is as bad as it could be for an MLS regular season game, but I've actually enjoyed what they are trying to do, and I think it gives this team a much higher overall ceiling on what they could accomplish and how good they could really be if they can get a couple things fixed. So I kind of liked it, actually. I like what I've been seeing the last couple games.
In the 4 games that we've played with him at the helm, Hoyos, that is, Colorado, I think we could all agree Colorado was the better team that day. And like you said, he trashed it and he went another direction the next game against RSL, which was the best game, right? He went from the worst game to the best game, which credit to him. He did change some things. I kind of felt like he was forced into it because he didn't have Bright. He didn't have Ayala. I can't remember, was Segovia even available? I don't remember.
He missed the next one.
Game. Okay, it was the next one that he missed. So I felt like he was almost forced into, okay, I got to go a little more defensive because we have no defensive midfielders. Got to go with 5 in the back or 3 in the back, however you like to refer to it. And I felt like that's the way he was forced to go, kind of like we don't give Mascherano credit for going with the false 9. The reason he went with the false 9 is because Luis Suarez got suspended. So he kind of fell into that. Same way with Hoyos, he fell into it. Now, I would have been happy if it worked. Let's keep going with it. But it felt like it was okay in the first half of the Revs game. And then at halftime, he takes off Noah Allen, which inexplicably he takes him off instead of Mura, which Noah Allen was having a much better half than Mura was. Takes off Noah Allen, brings in Allende for him. They go back to a 4 in the back. I know you said on Twitter that you thought Allende was playing like a wing back. Maybe. I didn't see it, but maybe. But I felt like he didn't stick with it. And then he went back to the 4 in the back against Orlando. So I'm not happy with what he's doing. I try not to be overly critical because he is the interim head coach. I think he was forced into this position because I really do believe that Mascherano was not let go. He was going to be let go, but he decided to quit before he got fired. So I think Hoyos was kind of just thrusted into this without being ready. Now, the only reason I'm a little harder on Hoyos than I usually would be for an interim is because he's responsible for bringing in these players. And I'm annoyed that we got Berterame. I'm annoyed that we re-signed Allende. And I think that is probably the only reason that I'm a little more critical of Hoyos, because it's not just his coaching or decisions. It's the fact that he's been making these decisions for over a year now.
Yes. I see the ideas that he's trying to implement with this team, and I think this is the right direction we should be going. So it's not that I think that the play's been great. Obviously, what we saw against Orlando City was not great.
Right.
I still think the storyline is worse than the actual performance. Like, I did get to watch it with sober eyes, knowing what was going to happen, and I still felt like the performance was fine, and you'd still expect to win that game 9 times out of 10, and even that, winning the game 5-1, like comfortably winning the majority of the time. So I feel good about the idea that is now being implemented, and I still think it gives this team overall, in the long run, the best chance to be as great as possible. And like, I also think there's been some romanticizing about what Javier Mascherano was, because I think the results have been better over the last 4 games, even including as frustrating as Saturday.
Over the last 20 games, the Mascherano was, and I know that you're going to say that they lost to Nashville, but over the last 20 games with Mascherano, he only lost 2 of them.
Let's just talk 2026, because I think it's fair, because they have the same rosters, right?
Okay.
Mascherano won 2 games this year. He only won 2.
He only lost 1.
But he only won 2. And guess what?
Okay.
Hoyos has already won 2. So it's like, I hear what you're saying, but it's not like the wins are stacking up either. It's just a lot of draws, the same frustrations at home. And I think the performances have, in my opinion, given me more confidence that they're going to run and be better moving forward than I felt with Mascherano. The style change that you just mentioned a couple minutes ago that I do want to sort of pivot back to, it's not the 4-man backline that I think is the big style change. It's actually what they're doing in the midfield. Instead of playing that flat 4-man midfield, which is really just a 2-man midfield, they went to a true 3-man midfield this game with Segovia, with Bright, with DePaul, dueling 8s, yeah. And that, I think, is what I really think will get the most out of this team moving forward. And that's the thing that excites me the most. So, yes, okay, they went back to a back 4, but it's the midfield and what they did in the midfield in this game that I think is going to give me the most hope going forward, that I really do like.
I agree with you to an extent. The only reason I am hesitant to say, and that's, by the way, that's the midfield I've always wanted. I want Rodrigo and Segovia to be the 8s, and then Bright to play the 6 role, and then let's just manage it that way. So that is what I've wanted. The thing is, in the second half, Orlando, they gave away the midfield. There was no midfield for Orlando. They said, we're going to press high and we're going to hold the low block with the rest. So they had their way in the midfield because there was nobody defending in the midfield. The other reason that I have my doubts, you brought up the XG earlier on Twitter about the XG and how good it is. They had a great game against RSL. When you look at the Colorado game, the XG for Colorado was far better than Miami's. When you look at the second half of the New England game, it was far better for New England than it was for Miami. And when you look at the second half of Orlando compared to Miami, again, it was far better. We haven't put together a full 90. And I feel like the second half, the opposing teams have had better performances. And again, Hoyos, I don't want to kill him too much. If you look at his coaching career and his resume, it's not impressive. So I don't expect much from him. but it's obvious that his in-game adjustments are not there, and the other teams are adjusting and they're dominating the second halves of these games.
I think that's fair. And I think there's a couple explanations for it that both make sense and are concerns. Like you just said about Guillermo Moyos, I am not in favor of giving him the job long term. I don't want anyone to think that's my position. I just like some of the introductions that he's added to this team. And like, I do think there's a real argument that he's been an upgrade over Javier Mascherano over these last 4 games. I am not sure. In fact, I think Inter Miami would have gotten less points over the last 4 games if Mascherano had stayed in charge. And everyone can say, oh, if Miami gets a 3-0 lead with Mascherano, they would win. But I don't think they would have gotten a 3-0 lead with Mascherano. To that point, he's a new coach. And in some ways, I think he deserves more expectations because he's so familiar with this roster. And so some of the personnel decisions, things like the Facundo Mora thing that was going on, are frustrating because he's been watching these games since the minute Facundo Mora got here. He's been watching Ian Frey for the last 2 years. So you're right. He shouldn't get any grace in that regard. But on the other hand, in terms of being an actual on-field coach, he is implementing a new style that is much more aggressive, that is going to demand more physically from the players. And that is going to take a period of adjustment, not just from a physicality standpoint, but also making sure you're covering the cracks that you are sort of unveiling when you bring out this new system. Like I said, they're trying to play much higher. Maxi Falcone and Mikael now as center backs are going to be on islands more often. That is just going to happen. So they have to change.
Up insanely high, both of them.
Okay, but regardless, like, your center backs are going to have to be on islands more often under this type of system. Even if you're, however aggressive or conservative you play your fullbacks in that particular game, that's going to happen. So the center backs have to change the style of play they're going at in order to make it more difficult for the attackers. And it has looked to me like our center backs, particularly Maxi Falcone, but all of them to an extent, have really struggled to understand, I have to play differently if this is how we're going to play as a team. And so it's not just that Maxi Falcone can't do it, but he has to make the adjustments. And every game that they have, they put on new film. Hopefully he's watching it and he's learning from it, and we're going to get better and better at it. But I think about what this team has done offensively, and I think about how you could improve defensively. I still think this gives the team a much higher ceiling of what they could be. And then you think about, okay, if this is what we are going to be, maybe we do rebuild our roster a little bit in the summer, and we think, okay, we do need a faster center back. We do need an extra wing back, so you have flexibility to put Ian Frey back at center back if you need to, or whatever it is. But like, now that you have this, you can build off of it. Whereas what we were doing with Mascherano for so long, it felt maxed out. It felt like the only way that was going to be consistently good is if you just completely out-talented the other team. And it just didn't feel sustainable now that you didn't have that enormous talent advantage that you had last year.
I disagree with, and I know you say to stick to 2026, but just real quick, going to the end of 2025. I felt like at the beginning of the year, Mascherano, I wasn't a fan of the hire. Thought he was too inexperienced for a team that needed to win now. He was going to have his growing pains. He did have his growing pains, but I felt he became a little more flexible as the year went on. A lot of people obviously don't want to give him credit for the false 9 thing, but you know what? Before that game where, was it against NYCFC? No, it wasn't NYCFC. It was in Cincinnati. When Suarez was available to come back, I expected him back. Did you? I think everybody expected him. Nobody expected him to actually keep him on the bench and play Messi as a false 9. He did that. That was his decision. And then the Rocco, he made that change 2 games with like 2 games left in the regular season. Ustadi wasn't injured. He showed the flexibility to change when he saw something needed to be changed. And then I know Rocco, everybody loves his performance in the playoffs. Granted, he won. He faced like 20 shots the entire last game and playoff run. That was because Mascherano changed up the defense also, the way they were set up. Jordi Alba wasn't pushing as high. He let Silvetti handle the left side out wide. And I thought that he also didn't get enough credit for that. And again, Mascherano's gone. Probably a pointless conversation to have. But that's why I liked Mascherano, because he showed that he was becoming flexible. And I thought that he is learning on the job, on the go. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this is for the best. Maybe we're going to have a good coach, and we're just seeing him grow as we go. I was surprised that he left. I would have liked him to stay a little longer because I think that he would have tried other things if he saw that they weren't working out. Whereas in Hoyos, we're only 4 games in, but he finally found something that worked with the 3-man back line, and then he went back to the 4-man back line, and I was like, dude, you just found something that worked pretty well. Why'd you switch off of it so quickly? And that was my whole thing where I felt Mascherano, when he saw something worked, he tried it out a little longer. Whereas in this one, it was like, oh, why did we switch?
So I loved this decision. I really did, and I'll tell you why. I'll ignore it. I'll leave the Mascherano conversation because it is over, and debating how we did in the first 9 games this year versus the end of last year, like it's a whole conversation unto itself.
Yep, fair.
But like I said, I think what I really want from Guillermo Hoyos over the next 8 games is to show, or the next 4 games, but his 8-game tenure is to show what the upside of this team really is. Like, how good are the new players you've gotten if you put them in a position to succeed? And what is the ceiling of this team? My personal opinion is that Inter Miami will be best in a 4-3-3, which is what we saw on Saturday. And so I appreciate the idea that going to a back 3 worked for a couple games. But in my head, I want to see this team at its absolute peak. And I do think that goes back to a back 4 because of the way this team is built. It's very heavy and deep on midfield talent, and it's very heavy and deep on attacking talent, and it's pretty thin at center back talent. So the idea that I want to have 3 center backs on the field at all times it's not something I want to build into. And so if we were playing a must-win game this weekend, you can convince me that's the way to go. But in terms of maximizing what this team could be, making sure they're in MLS Cup winning form come the playoffs or trophy winning form come the Leagues Cup or whatever it is, like I actually think a back 4 is how this team works best. And until the roster changes, I'm sort of out on a 3-man back line unless you're forced into it. Because again, I'd rather have a bad result now that shows you something of what you could be than just try and eke out a result and then leave so much meat on the bone for the rest of the season.
My worry with this, because the first 35 minutes, I thought to myself, everybody's going to get so overly excited about how well they're playing. I'm not a fan of Luis Suarez starting. So I think he's great on the pitch. I think he should be on there for 30 minutes, 35 minutes. I don't think he should start. But when I saw that the way they were playing the first 35 minutes, I said everybody's going to be convinced that we found the sauce. And I think people were forgetting how bad Orlando is. Because, yes, they looked great for 35 minutes. Orlando's terrible. They gave up to 5 to Nashville. They gave 6 to LAFC. And I predicted that Miami would throttle them also. Now, obviously, Crepeau helped out a lot because he saved a lot of chances because they could have had 5 in the first half. And this the game could have been put away. But Orlando is not very good defensively, especially when they're not in that solid low block. And I felt like Miami took advantage of that in the first half. And I think it might be a little bit of fool's gold to think that they were really that good because you see what they look like when they're playing against a low block. You saw them in the second half. They had no shots on target. Now, I understand that Berterame had a couple chances, but not one shot on target in the second half.
I think that what it looked like in the first half against Orlando City is what you would hope it would look like against a bad team. And it gives me the confidence to run it back next week. Just because Inter Miami doesn't get just because it's a bad team doesn't mean that it should, you should score 6 goals. Like, let's be fair. They scored 3 goals against an MLS team. That's what you would expect from them to do, and that's what you would hope for them to do. So, sure, it might not look quite as good if you go to Toronto or FC Cincinnati a week from now or a week and a half from now, but I still think that's the signs of how an offense unlocks itself. I don't think we should be minimizing that just because Orlando City is not that good. That's what it's supposed to look like against a not good team.
I don't know, because I don't know if you remember the beginning of last year, we thought we looked really good. We go into LA to play that Champions Cup game where they start playing that low block against us. And then we played against the low block basically almost the rest of the year after that, and we just couldn't break it down. We would have moments here and there, but we had a really hard time breaking that down. And it looked a lot like the same in the second half against a bad Orlando team. I'm interested to see how it looks like against Toronto. Now, Toronto is down like 10 players, and I'm not even exaggerating. It's not hyperbolic. They're down like 10 players this past weekend. I don't know if they're going to be healthy next weekend, but we might be playing against another not-so-great team.
Well, yeah, but like that's why I would run it out, is because this could be something. And the fact that it was one game and it looked good, I think, and not just one game, like you saw the impact that Suarez had in the previous game. They have found more offensively over the last couple games. And so just because they haven't done it against a great team doesn't mean that it's not been much better. Like I don't actually understand
lost.
That point. Like I still think the performance is. I get it. No, like that is the top line. That is the only thing that matters, and I get that. But I also think the storyline is worse than the performance. I thought the performance was really good. I think if you repeat that performance, you're going to win 9 out of 10 games, and half of them are going to be 4-1 wins. Like that's just how I saw that.
What you're hoping is that we repeat the first half and not the second half. But what I'm
No,
telling
even
you is
the
that
second
I
half.
think that what we're going to okay, because I think what
even
we're
the
going to
second
see a
half.
lot of is the second half. But the second half, we were just under pressure constantly. We're going to give up goals. We're going to keep leaking goals. It doesn't matter if it's Rocco, St. Clair, or Newer back there. If you're given that many counter opportunities, you're going to get scored on.
Not to 4 goals. And also, I thought Inter Miami was good for a goal or two in the second half also. Like, I really did. They were creating opportunities. Messi had some moments that could have been assists. Like, Berterame had one of the most egregious misses of his time at Inter Miami in that second half. And it could have been the game winner in the 89th minute or whatever it was. I'm sorry, 81st minute or whatever. So, like, I looked at the second half and I thought, man, if Maxi Falcone isn't having his worst game at Inter Miami and Berterame hits one, we might have won the second half 1-0. Like that's really how I felt about this performance. And I will, again, grant it, did not watch the game live. So all the emotions that I'm sure were coming through when everyone is just watching the whole thing fall apart, I didn't have that feeling. Yeah. But just from a raw watching of the film, like I still felt the second half was pretty solid too. And the first half they should have been up 4 or 5-0. So yeah, I didn't feel that bad about this game, honestly.
Okay. So is it panic time?
What do you think? Let me ask you first. I want to get a sense of how you're thinking about this.
The way the game played out, I would say in context, I say yes, but it's also a no, just because you know in the summer there's going to be such a large turnover, right? The coach, the roster. But if there isn't a large turnover in the summer, and this is the roster and the coach that we have leading into the second half of the year, then yes. So I guess I would say yes, just going based off of what we have right now and assuming that nothing will change. Now, my hope is that things will change. We'll have some new players, but Terame will be off to who the hell cares. And Hoyos will be back in the office with the new coach on the sideline. That's my hope. But just going strictly based off of what I saw on Saturday and assuming that maybe nothing changes, then yes, I do think it's panic time because I don't think that this team is built to win.
Yeah, I agree with that. And not only that, I think it's been panic time. And I think part of panicking is getting a new coach. Not even panicking, but realizing it's not good enough is getting a new coach. So totally agree with you. I think if this is what we go with for the rest of the season, I don't think Inter Miami is in a particularly good position to make an MLS Cup run or anything like that. But, it's the thing about panicking, it kind of implies you don't have a solution. And I think there are some really ready-made solutions. Mascherano, in my opinion, wasn't going to be the guy. I appreciate what he did in the final 15-game stretch of the season last year, but they made the change, and I think that was a good thing for Inter Miami long term. I think since then, and over the course of the season, we've realized Berterame is not the guy. And so if you're stuck with him for the next 2 years, yeah, it is panic time. But I kind of think Inter Miami can find a way to get him off the roster. Dane St. Clair, I think you could have a very similar conversation about. David Ajala, a guy that I think there's value to go get. So yes, if this is what we're stuck with, I think it is panic time. But I kind of think you've learned enough to make decisions to give yourself some options in the summer to sort of improve. And that all begins with getting the right coach. So I'm actually kind of chill.
If Orioles wins the next 4, because, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Toronto is very injured going into, even though they gave San Jose a game this past weekend, and if it's not for, oh my God, I forgot the kid's name, Reed, Reed Roberts, I believe, with an amazing. If you haven't watched it, it's an amazing clearance, one of the best clearances I've ever seen at the line, in like the 88th minute to salvage that point for San Jose. Toronto beat San Jose, and San Jose, for anybody that doesn't know, have before going into that game have won 9 out of the first 10 games. Only team in MLS history to do so. So San Jose's on fire. Toronto almost beat them, but they are very injured. It's possible Miami beats Toronto in Toronto with all the injuries. Then they have Cincinnati, which hasn't been in the best form, even though the last couple of games they look better. And then you have Portland, which is not good. And then you finish off with Philadelphia, which is obviously not good. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that you win 3 of those 4 games, maybe even all 4. If that happens, are you comfortable with Hoyo staying? Because I don't care what happens. Win all 4 games by 10 goals. I don't want to see him after the after the World Cup break.
I agree with you. One of the things that also doesn't make me panic about this game is there was a lack of second half adjustments. Mm-hmm. And if I felt that Guillermo Hoyos was going to be the long-term coach, it would really concern me. But I don't think that. So that's another part of this where he's maybe an upgrade on Javier Mascherano, but I also think not good enough, regardless of what these next 4 games look like. And I think that would be more a reflection on how talented this team actually is than Guillermo Hoyos as a coach, and probably a reflection on Javier Mascherano as well.
And I think that's been the biggest indictment on him is his adjustments in the second half. Like all the overall stats look nice because in the first half we've looked pretty good at a lot of these games. But when you look at the second half and you isolate it, which I did today, the stats in the second half of those 4 games are lopsided the other way. And so it just goes to show that we've been outplayed and outcoached in those games.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't want to end up being this Guillermo Hoyos defender in a way that results in him or people thinking he should get the job.
That's too late. Everybody's just assuming that you're going to frost your tips soon.
Well, that's a story for another day. No, I just think that this is like a good team that should be getting results like this on a regular basis, and that the fact that Guillermo Hoyos is doing it is not like him being a superstar. What I will say in defense of him, the bench was pretty thin over the last couple days, last couple games. If you go back and look at the weekend, like the kids on the bench are 17 years old, and Gonzalo Lujan, and that was his only option. And unlike a new coach who wouldn't have all the bad memories, Guillermo Hoyos did watch all of last year and saw what Gonzalo Lujan was. And so while I do think Lujan's played better than Maxi Falcone this year, I actually can understand someone who watched Gonzalo Lujan since he got to Inter Miami and think maybe I am better with Maxi Falcone in the in the back line. So that is part of it, I think. There's been no David Ajala. There's been no Reguilon. There's been no David Ruiz, who mysteriously was not on the bench this weekend. Santi Morales somehow not on the bench this weekend. David Ajala, who was like supposed to be healthy, has still not been available. So, and then obviously Matteo Silvetti has got the hamstring issue. Like, that's as down bad the roster has been in kind of a long time. So, yes, it's been bad. There are the halftime adjustments haven't been great, but you are kind of working with an interim coach who doesn't have a great track record and doesn't have a lot of options. So it's also like kind of to be expected, I think.
Going to his starting lineup now and his decisions. Are you for starting Luis Suarez? Because me and Chris have been debating this back and forth. I think that he should come on as a super sub. Come on as early as the 65th minute. But I don't like him starting the games. Chris says that he should start the games and we should take a 3-0 lead every game. I say that there's no guarantee you take a 3-0 lead every game, but I get his thinking also. Where do you lie on the Suarez? Look, I think we both agree when he's on the pitch, he's a difference maker. He's the best striker we have. He's the best backup striker in the league and probably top half of the league in striker position, period. He's just, I don't think he has the legs to go 90 minutes, so I'd rather him come in late.
I would start him for the rest of until the World Cup, because one of the things that is true is he hasn't played 90 minutes in 6 months. And so maybe if you start playing him 75, 85 minutes, the legs will come back at least a little bit. Not the legs come back. He'll just have a little bit more in him for a longer portion of the game.
Well, we saw it for a whole year last year, and he's a year older. It's not going to get better.
I think so much of why Suarez was bad last year was because of Mascherano. I really do believe that, and I've explained it a lot. But like, I guess my point is, if you think he's good for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever, like I do think that could extend 10, 15 minutes as he gets more 90-minute performances under his belt. So what I would do is I'd give him to the World Cup and see if that does start to improve. That's 4 more games. By that point, it'll have been 6 or 7 starts in a row. And like, I do think we might see his ability to impact games extend a little bit further into his performances. But again, it's like you watch Berterame, you watch Tadeo Allende on the field, and it is hard to start those guys over Luis Suarez, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, Allende is horrible and Berterame is worse. So if Suarez starts, does Silvetti come off the bench?
I would start those 3 alongside Messi.
Well, you said 4-3-3, right? So let's do it. I don't have the graphic, unfortunately. So let's go 4-3-3. Rocco, if he's ever going to start, it's going to be after the World Cup. So we're talking about for the last 4 games. So it's going to be St. Clair. You got Noah Allen, because Region will never play. We got Frey on the right. And then we have Mikael and possibly Lujan. We don't know if Falcon is going to stay there or it's going to be Lujan. But at some formation, some iteration of that. The midfield, I think we both agree, DePaul, Segovia, and Bright is the perfect trio, with Bright playing that 6 role and the other one's playing the 8 role. So now you got 3 spots left. Messi obviously takes up one of those spots. Now you have 2 more spots, and you have 4 players. You have Silvetti, Allende, Berterame, and Suarez. Who gets those 2 spots?
It's Suarez and Silvetti to me.
Okay, that's fair. Because as long as you don't say Berterame and Allende, okay.
Yeah. No, here's the other thing. Speaking of panic time, like I think the biggest panic now is Berterame. We've seen him get a couple goals to get his feet under him, but I think the biggest indictment is, as good as that first half looked against Orlando City, he was not involved in any of it. Not involved in any of it. And then you go to the second half, and you want someone to stop the bleeding, and he could not stop the bleeding. So it's like he doesn't really raise your ceiling, and he doesn't really raise your floor.
He brings you down.
It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
So I really think this game was like quintessential. It's not going to happen with Berterame here. If you want to start him for 4 more games to get 2 more goals out of him, fine. But like I think maybe priority number 1, or maybe after getting a coach, is getting Berterame off the roster and
figuring
trying to
that
reshape things, because I think it's over for him. I really do.
Shout out to Richard Greenberg. We're playing against a very injured Toronto FC. Should be a victory into Miami. That's what we were talking about earlier. That we have a game that we could and possibly should win just because of the talent, because they're so injured on Saturday.
But
A random
Dan,
1 o'clock game, by the way.
You know why we're definitely going to win that game? Because it's in Toronto. If it was at Miami Freedom Park, I'd be a little worried. But I think in Toronto, it should be easy.
We're road warriors.
Exactly.
No, for sure. Yeah, look, I thought that starting with a Colorado and RSL win was huge for Hoyos. I thought that was a great start. I think it's just unfortunate the way the 2 home games have kind of gone. And I could definitely see us winning in Toronto and then winning in Cincinnati, and then all of a sudden everybody is praising Hoyos and everybody's loving Suarez, and I could see this turning. You know, this is how this goes in sports, right? You flip flop. I could also see us getting a draw, people losing their patience a little further, and I wasn't gonna bring this up, but now I'm curious because I just thought about it, and I don't know if I've gotten your take on it. The fact that it looks like there might be some tension somewhere there, right? And then Hoyos comes after such a bad game, such a bad second half, and he answers 1 single question in the post game. Do you have an opinion on that? Because I know some people say they don't care. I don't care usually. If anybody watches this normally and they know my stance on it, I hate player interviews. I hate when players go talk after the games. I think it's absolutely pointless. They're not going to give you absolutely anything. I don't like it. The coach, on the other hand, I like when the coach speaks. I like to hear what they did, why they did what they did. And I was very annoyed that he only answered 1 question. What's your take on that?
You know, I've said this a couple times on the episode, but like I think the storyline is worse than the performance, but that actually doesn't take away from the fact that you lost 4-3 to your rival in embarrassing fashion at home. And so if there was ever a time where the coach has to really come out and say, this is why it happened and this is who's responsible, or this is why I'm responsible, or really like face the media, it's in that situation. And so the fact that he didn't, or he did what he did and left after one question, to me is like super disrespectful. And it's like, if I thought he was going to be the long-term coach, I would have a problem with it. And because he's not, it's sort of like, that is pretty disrespectful. And I do think you can take some clues on how the entire organization operates, that people think that's acceptable. But from this isolated incident, it's just disrespectful, and maybe he'll talk about it in the press conference this week.
Because look, I usually don't give a crap about. I don't watch the post-game press conference. I'm never really interested in any of that. This game, I was curious to hear the coach speak. I was like, I wonder what he's going to say. I wonder what he's going to say about the second half adjustments. Why he put in Allende instead of Lujan, which has been what we've traditionally done over the last year to protect the lead. So I was very curious. When I heard that he only answered one question, I was like, wow, really? The coach, after a performance like that, I was very surprised. And what I think annoys me a little more about Hoyos is the fact that he really hasn't answered any questions over the last year or two since he's been the sporting director, since he's made these acquisitions. You haven't heard from him. I didn't even know what he looked like until he took the sideline. I didn't.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much responsibility he's had in the sporting director department, if I'm being totally honest. But like I think it is reflective of some of the attitude that goes on in the front office and within the building. And that is a concern, no doubt. And I think anyone dismissing it is also maybe off base on how easily they do that.
Yeah. And like I said, the player thing, that shit never bothers me, to be honest with you. I really don't care. And for anybody watching on YouTube, if you haven't noticed, we have a random producer coming in and starting up polls, so you can put two and two together and realize who just randomly jumped in to produce the show in the background. Did Scotty buy a used Acura from Hoyos? So I'm sure you know who's in the back. But yeah, all right. So you said panic only if things stay as they are. I say the same, but we both agree during the summer, we got 2 months off. We got a 2-month transfer window. Things are going to change. This roster will not look the same, and we'll have a new coach by the time July or August comes around.
I think that is the plan.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of guys to move on, if I'm being totally honest with you. Like, I think they got some real outgoing work to do.
Berterame, one. St. Clair, another. I think St. Clair's gone.
I think so too. I think David Ajala is a guy I would go get some value for. Whether it's allocation money, he has value, and if you're not going to use him, go get something. He was the best
11 in MLS last year.
Well, he was certainly one of the best U22 players, and I just go get some value for him if you're not going to play him regularly. And I don't think, as you mentioned, I think we have the perfect midfield. So unless one of the other two, like Segovia or Bright, is getting the big move Ayala, because whatever he's providing you, David Ruiz can do just as well.
Before the season started, I thought Segovia was going to be gone by the summer. I hope that that's not the case anymore, because I think Segovia's underrated. I think people underrated and underappreciate him.
I agree. We'll see. The other thing is, if you do move Berterame and you move some of these pieces, you're going to free up a lot of space without creating huge needs. Because as much as we could complain about Tadeo Allende, I don't think he's going anywhere, and I think he can give you exactly what Germán Berterame has given you so far. So you're not really losing a player by moving Berterame. Dane St. Clair, you move him on. Rocco steps up to the starting spot, but Aza steps up to the backup. You're fine there. You haven't really gotten anything from David Ajala this year. So if you move these guys, you don't have to replace them. You can just go fill holes elsewhere, and then maybe you can go upgrade at center back and move Gonzalo Lujan or whatever it is. So, I think if they start pulling these triggers, there would be opportunity to really reset this roster. And the thing that does scare me, though, is a new coach coming in and saying, I want to see what I have first before we start moving pieces. and that would
We'll tell you
That
what you
would- I
got. You
wouldn't like
you go ahead, click on DRV Pink Dialogue, click on Battered Herons. We'll tell you what you got, and believe me, you need to make some moves.
yeah. So that would be my one fear is they kind of slow play it to see who the coach is first, and that they don't get the coach until sort of the end of the World Cup, and then he wants to wait and see what they've got. That would be my fear.
And shout out to Amy. Hey, Danny, when's the MLS show? We actually did it this morning. I did it. Chris is celebrating Star Wars Day. So I did it this morning. Just a quick recap of the weekend. And the next one will be Wednesday night. So thank you, Amy, for following that channel. If you haven't already, Battered Soccer fans. All right. So I'll end it with this. And you were on with us last week, and we touched on it, but I'll reiterate. The Casemiro talk keeps getting louder and louder. It sounds like he's planning on moving to the States. Now, whether it be LA or Miami, it sounds like it's a real deal. Like it's going to happen. One, I don't know how Miami would make it happen because they'd have to move on for Berterame, I would assume, unless he takes like a friendly deal somehow. So just ignoring all the financials. Let's say it can happen. I still think that there's pressing needs somewhere else. We just said that we're happy with our midfield. Not to say that Casemiro isn't better than Segovia, better than Bright, probably even better than DePaul. Sorry, Argentines. I think he is. So not saying that he's not better than them, but I feel like we're set at midfield. I feel like we could use a winger. We could use a striker. I'm annoyed that this is the second year in a row that we're going to add to a position where I feel like it's one of the few places we already have depth. And that annoys me because, yes, it's great to have a world-class player, but why can't we get a world-class player at a place of dire need?
You know, it's funny. We talked about this last week, and you asked me, if there was a player, who would it be? And I actually did come up with a player that I think would be just perfect for Inter Miami. And I can tell you that. I'll tell you him in a second. But I agree with you. I think Casemiro is I think they're just trying to recreate Sergio Busquets, but I think we all see that there's a higher potential of if you can get the right player at forward. And so, Antoine Griezmann's a guy that would have been awesome, I think, instead of Berterame. I think, Mo Salah would be a guy that would be awesome instead of Berterame. If you can get Casemiro, I think you do it, but I don't think it's ideal.
No, because, and again, he's better than what we have in the midfield right now, but you're still going to have the deficiencies at the other positions. So you're still going to see a lot of the same issues. You're still going to have the deficiency at center back. You're still going to have the lack of creativity out in the wings. You're still going to have people whiffing up top forward with Berterame there or Allende or, unless Luis Suarez is randomly just playing 90 minutes at top level. So you're still going to have those deficiencies. So, yes, what you're going to do is you're going to move one of the few productive players, either Segovia or Bright, to the bench. If Casemiro comes in,
I know.
Falcon doesn't hit the bench. Berterame doesn't hit the bench. Allende, who's going to hit the bench if Casemiro shows up? It's going to be Segovia or Bright. Guess what? Two of your best players. One of them is going to see the pine. And that's what you're getting. And not to say that Casemiro isn't world-class or great to add, but on this team, he's going to come replace one of the few players that are actually contributing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I could talk myself into it. And if I was going to talk myself into it, I would say move Yannick Bright to center back. Exactly. Yeah. I would say move Yannick Bright to center back. Or maybe Yannick Bright gets sold to France or Germany, and then it's a perfect slot in or whatever. I would be able to talk myself into it. But I agree with you. I don't think it's ideal. I think maybe ideal would not even be signing a DP and just adding another U22 and a center back and another Max Tan player and kind of spread it out. But the guy that has come to me over the last couple of days that I think would be a really fantastic solution is Tim Weah, who's a U.S. national team player, played at Juventus in the top levels of France. No, well, I have no reason to think that. But my point is that style of player feels like a guy you could realistically get. And he could play striker. He could play right winger. He's got world-class pace. and he actually has like the technical ability that you would never get from a Tadeo Allende, and could score 1 million goals. So that's maybe how I would be thinking about this more is go to the top level. You don't have to get a world-class superstar that would either come as a free agent or as a like 36-year-old or whatever. You can still go get a 27-year-old, but one that's played the highest level of France, Champions League, highest level of Italy. Like those type of players still exist, and they only cost $15 million. Don't go to Liga MX or the Argentine league for it.
Please don't
ever again, please. So that's maybe the two ways I would go. Go get a 20 million player from Europe, or just leave it open and go with another 6 million signing from Bolivia or whatever, and get your extra winger, get an extra center back, make it happen that way.
I'll end it with this. One thing that I have noticed over the last couple months is that Miami is looking within the MLS. Okay, maybe we don't like MLS players, but if you get the top MLS players, then you got something. They went after the goalie of the year without really checking his profile for some reason. They just saw that he was goalie of the year. They brought him in. They tried to get the defensive player of the year, Blackman. That fell through. And by the way, he's playing awesome in Vancouver. He would have been a great player on this team. Ayala,
maybe.
best 11. Yeah. Maybe. Best 11, they brought him in. So they're looking within the league. So here's me, and I'm putting on my Jedi, well, I guess, Stormtrooper hat, okay? Chicago. The Chicago Fire are in an interesting predicament because everybody has them so heavily linked to Lewandowski. But they already have a Hugo Kuipers, which is absolutely balling. Hugo Kuipers at the moment is leading the league in goals, 10 goals. So it's one of two things. They either keep Hugo Kuipers and they don't get Lewandowski, but Lewandowski wants to live in the States. Or they bring in Lewandowski and then they sell off Hugo Kuipers, whose contract ends in December. I think if Hugo Kuipers ends up being available, Miami goes after him. Now, I don't think Chicago's dumb enough to do that now that Lewandowski's like Luis Suarez's age. And Hugo Kuipers, it looks like he's at the top of his game right now. But because of the name and the Eastern European population in Chicago, I think that they're still interested in bringing Lewandowski in. But Hugo Kuipers has to go in that case.
I think he's going to be more similar to Berterame than we would like to admit, if I'm being totally honest.
Kuipers?
Yeah. Again, I really think that Inter Miami is not a place that can get a high-quality MLS player as a DP and think that's good enough. I would have loved to get Denny Bouanga, but think about Denny Bouanga. He's the second best player, maybe third now that Son's here, in the entire league and has been for multiple seasons. That's maybe the minimum standard for a DP with what Inter Miami can actually attract. So I wouldn't be that excited. Now, if you told me it's for 6 months and this is, we're going to reset with this player and then maybe he'll move in the off season, like, again, you could convince me that it's a good move, but just like Berterame was hopefully going to be the guy for the next 3 years, I wouldn't have a ton of confidence that Kuipers would be, if I'm being totally honest.
I like Kuipers. When I watch him play, I think he's Chicago has Lewandowski's discovery rights. Well, that's one of the reasons, I guess. And Kuipers is going to Europe. Definitely, I can see that. But look, if he becomes available, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami goes after him, even if, like you said, if it's for 6 months, because they've looked and they've shown that they're okay looking within MLS. Right now, he's the leader. He's the leader in the Golden Boot. He's tied with Peter Musa, I believe, from Dallas. So, we'll see.
Yeah, but can I ask you, because here's the thing that really does concern me. Berterame on paper was a good signing. Not saying it was a fantastic signing, and I definitely think you're soured on it because it prevents you from doing other things. But like when Berterame comes into the team, you expect it to work, and it just hasn't worked at all. And particularly his ability to connect with Lionel Messi hasn't worked at all. So another guy that might not work with Messi would be a big concern of mine at the striker position, if they don't have the ability to be flexible and do other things. So I see what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Kuipers is a good player, but yeah.
Well, the thing is with Berterame, he puts himself in position to be dangerous and to score, to be a poacher. He just hasn't been able to finish. Kuipers is the same. But he's been finishing all those chances. Now, can he do it when he comes to Miami? I don't know. But I've seen him do it in Chicago enough where, and maybe that's it. I don't watch Liga MX. As soon as we got Berterame, I was sour on it just because he came from Liga MX and he took up a DP spot. I guess because I've seen Kuipers do it, I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't mind, even if it's a 6-month rental.
But maybe that's the right answer for Inter Miami is you're not going to know if someone can do it with Messi until you actually see them do it with Messi. So maybe we bring him in for 6 months, and if he can do it with Messi, you sign him for the next 2 years. You know what I mean? And if it doesn't work, you already can bail after 6 months. Maybe that's the way to go. I can get behind that.
Well, Scotty, appreciate you taking the time to join me to talk a little Herons. Please let everybody know where they could find you if they haven't already.
Yeah, guys, check me and my co-host Sora out at the DRV Pink Dialogue, and you can find me on Twitter at Scotty Grays. And I love talking ball, so feel free to interact anytime you have a chance.
Absolutely. And for those of you that were on here wondering where Chris was, he's out there celebrating Star Wars Day. It's his day of the year, so hope he enjoyed his day, and may the Force be with him. If you're listening on audio, we appreciate you listening to the end. Please leave 5 stars in a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. And we will be back on Wednesday to preview Toronto FC. So until the next one, have a good one.